Um, so I'm Thomas, and I'm here to talk about some foundations, what I think of as foundations, regarding law. And I was just sitting down there and thinking, what is law? What is law? And just what came to my mind is law is sort of equal to the law, perhaps the way something is going to proceed. So there's many kinds of laws, as you saw in this so-called common law, so-called spiritual law, maritime law and business law of the human mind.
You forgot natural law.
Natural law there's that as well. There's many, which is perhaps an interpretation that could probably vary about, the law of nature. And I know from sort of kind of areas of academia, there's some arguments that say that nature is predatorial. And then there are some things that are coming out now are sort of like, well, actually it's more cooperative. But it's a bit of both. Perhaps it's what we might call good and evil. Nature has both. So I'll start with what I see as our first point of engaging in law. So in our first point of coming into creating opening a door in that area. And that is in the form of a question. That is your foundation. But the question has to be proper. Now, proper question might sound like nonsense to a police officer or someone in a position of authority based on what they've learned. So, I'll give some examples. If you're driving along and a police officer sets off the lights and pulls you over, and they come up to your door and they say, do you realise you were going over the speed limit? What are you going to say? What's going to be your response? Can I just, let's say that's happened, maybe a few responses just based on where you're at.
Was I?
How did you measure that?
Good.
No.
Okay, we got 3 interesting ones.
I have said once, and I'd only just left home, and I was going down to the local pub to have a meal with my tennis girls as a break-up. I got pulled up, and I just said, oh, excuse me, is this going to take very long? Because I'm in a hurry to find a toilet. And he said, oh, you were coming 80 around the corner, it was only 60, and this is, where there aren't driveways or anything like that. And I said, oh, well, I'm just trying to get to the closest toilet, which I think's down at the pub down the end of the road.
Yeah.
And he said, all right, we'll take it easy getting there, and he let me off. I'm glad he didn't ask for my licence or anything. He would have said, oh, your home is just, a few doors away.
So he responded in a decent way.
Yeah.
However, whether you did not need to go to the toilet or not is a question. So yours was no.
How do you know? How would you measure that?
How did you measure that? Okay, that's not a bad question. And yours was?
Was I?
Was I? So
That's really stupid.
that's a good question. Was I?
So answer a question with your question.
Yes, answer a question with the question in that case. He asked, do you realise, I asked, do you realise you're going over the speed limit? And you say, was I? So was I opens the door. And was I is a very basic question. And where one needs to learn to be at is in one's innocence. So it's a bit childlike. What do children do? They ask these really basic questions. And in a way we lose that because we get filled with all this knowledge and we stop asking the very basic questions. And in a way, the way I see it is we enter the labyrinth of knowledge and confusion and it becomes quite difficult to navigate. Where coming back to that state of mind is difficult because it is so simple and the way adults tend to respond to it sometimes. But it's pretty fun seeing how it goes and playing with it. It can be quite a lot of fun. So, was I? And then let's say the response is going to be, yes, you were. Or, yeah, that's what the reading came up with. You're going, and then he might inform you of how many kilometres you're going. And, you can ask things like, well, what do you believe about that? There's another great question. What does he believe about that? And he'll say, well, it's against the law. And, you might say again, what do you believe about that? And he's going to start to kind of probably realise that you're kind of questioning, undermining his very authority, or hers. And you just keep proceeding in this way. And, one might show where one's at, Would you like it if I slowed down? Can we agree upon that? And then he might be like, no, I'm going to fine you. And to that I would say, well, you do what you need to do, brother. I'm not here to get in the way of what you believe you need to do. Because I don't fear a fine if that's what he needs to do. That's none of my business. And what comes in the mail, well, that may not be much of my business either. What my business is what comes out of my mouth. And perhaps even some of the way I'm thinking. That's my business. And what we'll be looking at is you have to be very careful of what comes out of your mouth. Let them speak. Let the other person speak. Because it comes back to claims. Claims is a very important concept. It's a foundation of... This world is full of claims. It's possessed by claims. As opposed to when we're in our innocence, that childlikeness, just the whole idea of ownership is a claim. And I would question, how do we really own anything? What do people believe about ownership? Yeah.
It's a man-made construct.
Yeah.
Hey.
Anything else? So if it's a man-made construct, what about the things? Do you believe there are things that are yours?
I believe in contracts, and so, you know, I think that, I guess it depends on what you're talking about around what you own. So I don't think you can have any ownership over other people or, you know, relationships or, you know, in the natural world. But I think if there's a fair exchange. So if, you know, we make an agreement that I'm going to give you this and you give me that, then I think that, yeah, it's a transfer of ownership, but it has to be, but it's still something that's just agreed. It's not a right.
Well, it seems that the world's full of agreements.
Yeah.
But it's not that simple. Like, for example, you own your own body, don't you? You know,
Do we?
Well, in the sense that.
We don't actually. I mean, we should,
Yeah,
but we
releasing
don't.
it.
Well, in the sense that, you know, no one else does. You know what I mean? Like,
The claim's very personal.
yeah.
We're
like-
using it. We use it, and if no one else is using it,
But don't you get to decide who uses it? Like, don't you have, like, you own the rights to use a ship of your body, and if you didn't, anyone else can just come along and use it. And what does that
Exactly.
actually mean? Like, when
Yeah.
you're talking about a body, like,
well, if you're using it,
you own the rights.
then
to
someone
use
else you're already using it. So, you know, it's inhabited. It has a user, and it's the same with anything, be it a car. So, using, it's okay to use stuff, and it's perhaps more about the way we use stuff, and how are things being used. So it's all being used, but I think the controversy comes up in, where does using become what we might feel is maybe abusing or not asking.
In the study groups that we've run, for a highly evolved species, they don't have any concept of ownership. It's more of a stewardship. It's something that you're with, and that can even apply to your body.
Well, I think most spiritual, cultural, spiritual bodies, or knowledge, or religions, or they steer towards that. Perhaps that's the higher self. Is seeing it from a less possessive aspect. I mean, I know in Christianity, or the way I see the Christic thing is you have the Satan, the satanic, and you have the divine. And my interpretation of that is Satan is like the law of possession, the law of the material, and the divine is the law of beyond that, the spiritual, free from that. So if there's going to be a shit fight over stuff, well, maybe that's that lower law taking over, rather than sort of just kind of seeing it from a less possessive way.
This isn't about making it or trying to work out what claim means. This is more about a feeling that I have in this life that people are trying to make a claim over me all the time. Whether it be the smart meter, whether it be go taxes and there's a whole lot of things, or having to do things that we're forced to do by the system that we've got around us.
Yep.
And I feel like people are making claims on me all the time, even
Or that concern your well-being, perhaps, or your life.
just anything.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the world we live in. It's a world of claims, and things are just happening. And what I'm seeing is people kind of feeling ill at ease with it and in grievance towards this stuff, but not knowing what to do. How do you deal with this? And it comes back to what it means to question where it's coming from. So if you get anything in the mail and you write a question back, you send it to where it came from. And it's quite interesting to see what happens when you engage in that way. When you're responding to, so something will be sent out to you, whether it's a fine or you being informed about something. And then if you send a question back in correspondence, that's your that's you acting legally. And then that can open the door. So in a way, it's sort of like things will go as by presumption unless we're corresponding with a question. So it's a really powerful thing to do. And it seems that not many people, lawyers know how to sort of do that a bit, but general people don't. So it doesn't matter whether it's to do with vaccines or welfare issues. You know, there's people aren't corresponding, or if they are, I'm seeing people writing these sort of discourse letters, and they're saying so much, and in a way digging a hole rather than just asking a question. Questions like, with vaccines, it's like, has anyone got a claim on the children? So if you're being told that something has to happen to the children, well, the first thing to ask is, well, who's got a claim on the children to be saying such a thing? Is there anyone saying such a thing? And I think that's very, that changes the game. It just does, it seems to. Or where is something coming from, Who's claiming you owe this or that you've done this? Because they're systems. Allegedly they're systems. So by asking who, it's kind of like saying, does that make sense? It's sort of like, where's this coming from?
So I got a bill from the ATO last week for $19,000, apparently because I didn't pay enough tax last year. So what should my question in correspondence be? So it's clear what it is, what their claim is, and who it is.
Well, first of all, what comes to mind is the message from someone.
No, it's always just from the ATO,
Yeah, well, who's that?
Whoever answers the phone, if you call them, they just represent that agency.
Well, if you ask them, do they believe you owe them $18,000? Have you made an agreement with them? It's in a way it's like something just coming in your mail claiming you
My
owe.
accountant told me to expect it, so, because you do have taxes and you're working it all out.
I think there's that part of our mind that knows what to expect.
Yeah.
It's just about coming out of that presumption and starting to ask some questions. And there's different ways of doing things.
Yeah, so that's my question is, what is the question? So for instance, previously, like with the credit card debt, I just called them up and said, I'm not paying this. I am in a really tough financial situation. And then I found out all these, avenues that they put me through to different areas of the bank. And in the end, I just kept saying, I'm not paying it. I can't pay it. I want to negotiate. And in the end, that's all I kept saying. And then I negotiated a $7,000 debt down to like $250 on the spot. And I said, okay, it's cleared. And I don't have anything against any black. So I know it's possible, but I just don't know with the ATO how I'm going to try to negotiate that one.
Right, so they were claiming you owed 19.
Yeah, nearly 19,000, because my accountant did my taxes, and she said, you've been, when it is a balance sheet, so it's like, based on what you've earned, you need to actually pay more taxes. That's the system. So now I'm like, well, how do so part of me is like, well, the system's bullshit. I've paid so much tax already. I don't want to pay any more tax. I just think you should be happy with what you've got.
Sure.
What is
So
your
I just don't
account?
know how to.
What is your accountant? say?
My accountant's like, well, there's nothing we can do legally about. I mean, legally is in her legal construct, of course, in the accounting world. This
So
is
is
what
she
it
in
is.
agreement or not in agreement?
Well, no, she's in agreement in that she's an accountant, so she's like, well, you owe the money
She's in agreement. You are an extra naughty.
to the tax
Yeah.
office, yeah.
You could,
She told me it was coming, I knew it was coming, and now she held off to lodge my tax
So
return.
did she put in a lower return, and that was the answer? Or what happened?
So what happened was I work in technology startups, so I had to liquidate some shares, and so
Alright.
ended up getting more in the tax year than what I've been taxed at.
Oh.
yeah, like it needs to go like way deep. You need to ask like where the fundamental right of the government to tax you in the first place is. You're asking questions like that, like like where these laws come from.
That I have to
You know, is it lawful for them to actually ask this money from you? And you have to go, around there. And what is money? And well, you know, like going into that sort of section as well about, well, where does this money come from? Is it legal? Is it actually legal? Because I don't think any money is actually technically legal anymore, because it used to be about the gold reserves, and now it's just like fiction. It's just like numbers on paper. So yeah, like you need to be like probably going into those sorts of areas, which I'm not an authority
Yeah,
on.
so
Yeah,
you know, like,
that's my
yeah.
question.
Yeah, like,
there's a lot to open up, and there's a lot of questions that can open those doors. Whose government? Who believes? You know, does anyone believe you owe them that money? And you know, one might sort of ask, you know, just something like, is the message from someone? First of all, it's a good starting point, and see what you're going to, you know, how they respond. But preparing yourself for asking other questions. So, you know, has anyone met the government? You know, does anyone know who that is? It's
The questions might be who's asking,
Yeah. who's
followed
asking?
by
Who are
who's
you
the government.
sending this?
yeah, who's asking is
Yeah,
good.
who's asking?
It would be surely relevant to address a director who's been appointed under the Act that created the ATO, and to find out who is the legally responsible man, woman in that group, and what is the extent of their scope of office.
If you want to do all that work to try and find out all these things, go for it. But you know, this is very simple, and it's useful in when claims are being brought to you. So a burden comes to you. How do we deal with it without having to, you know, spend years studying in a law degree or something, but learning to ask questions properly that are very simple and opening these doors and seeing where that goes and working together with people, because it can be frightening, you know, it can be scary. You know, we all grow up, as I see it, somewhat intimidated by this idea of authority. And that's what keeps, you know, part of what keeps people from, keeps people behaving to some degree. But then when it's, you know, burdening us in a way that doesn't feel right in our heart, then maybe we want to start asking some questions. So yeah, and what you'll find is there will be a perseverance on the other side of being sent the same stuff, and it might seem more and more intimidating, and each time you get something, you respond with your same question. Because in a way, that whoever's sending that mail wants you to become a believer in
Yeah.
what's being sent to you.
My accountant said, they're going to put lots and lots of pressure on, because they just sent me this bill and said it's due next week. As if anyone could just pay an $18,000 bill like next week. She said, so they'll pressure you and they don't have the power to go into your bank accounts and take money.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can force you, they won't leave it, you can't leave the country if you've got an outstanding like Centrelink or tax debt. They can actually, I mean, that's the powers extend to stop you, you know. And then they take my tax return, so then I'll have to do my tax at the end of the year, which I'm happy, I'm like, okay, great, you can take that money and that offsets on your debt, but I'm going to keep paying it.
What seems to happen, if you're corresponding,
Don't take action, they just keep corresponding back.
yeah, and if you're corresponding, it can tend to, it kind of, in a way, it brings it back to zero, because you're doing your bit. You're honouring.
Yeah.
They're sending something, and you're sending something.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking a question. They're telling you this, and you're asking a question. So that then might end up in the courts, and then you'll either choose to go to sort it out before a judge, or choose not to go and just keep writing.
But is that sort of, could you look at the invoice for that money as an offer?
Yes,
It's an offer?
it's all an offer.
It's just an offer to you?
Because my normal standpoint would be to negotiate with them, to say, no, I'm not paying it, and I just keep going back with my question, which is, my statement, which is, no, I'm not paying it, until they put me through to whoever it is that you can negotiate, and then I'll just negotiate a number, which will be, I'll pay it off right now for $500.
And if you do,
That's what I generally do.
if you do start negotiating with them, will they interpret that as you accepting their terms and conditions? If you start
Well, no.
negotiating with them?
If you're asking questions, that's not an agreement.
Yeah. Negotiating, as far as I'm concerned, is not an agreement, we're negotiating.
An agreement's
that's
not
right.
had until an
Yeah.
agreement
Yeah.
is
Negotiated.
between
Yeah.
two parties
Yeah,
is
so
there.
you've got to be really
These are my
careful that you don't enter into contract with them.
Yeah, well then I think if you say nothing, that's the
Yeah.
implicit understanding is that you've accepted it by doing
That's
nothing.
fine.
Or if you
Response
negate it
somewhere.
as well.
Yeah.
So if you're asking a question, it's neutral. If you say no, that can, in a way, that brings it into a contest.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
say,
then
no,
it's
I'm not doing
the
what I
fight's
want,
on.
put me through to the right person, and eventually they just keep palming you off, and then you get to, apparently, the right part of the organisation that they, in the banks, it's the hardship team, they call it, where they have the power to negotiate with you, but nobody knows that.
Right.
So, I mean, sure, there must be different ways to do it, that's just the way that I've been doing it, and it works. I mean, I've been to court,
That's
and I've
interesting.
said the same thing, like,
Yep.
I'm sorry, I can't afford to pay that. I'm happy to, do some community service. I think the judges went, oh, fuck, this is just too hard. Just let it, don't worry about it, off you go. But, I mean, I just like to know the right way to do it because,
If you've got money
I don't think there was
sitting in
anything
your bank
wrong
account.
with what you did. I think you got a really interesting outcome. And these are stories that are interesting in terms of, what outcome you got. But I was just going to say it's all an offer. Everything,
Yeah.
is sort of an offer in one way or another. An offer to believe this or believe that, where, it's kind of, the spell of the language is like, well, no, it's not an offer, it's just the way it is and you have to do it. But then when you ask the questions, which is the first point of your opening the door, you realise that, it's not the case at all. So where you have to be careful is you've got a lot of people that want to get out of things, or they want something, and I don't personally support too much of that. I think it's good to be humble and to be genuine, and if you don't have much money, then you don't have much money. which is why one would question,
Yeah.
you know, if you've got plenty of money, then it might be easy to just to pay it.
Yeah. Well, no, I've just lost my job 2 weeks ago, so now I'm like, well, I've been retrenched, so I've got a small payout to keep me going until I find another job, which in my work can be months. I don't want to give that to the tax office when I've already paid them an enormous amount of money. So I'm just want to negotiate with them and come to an agreement, get it done. I'm happy to pay something, but
Yeah, cool.
yeah.
That's amazing that you got $19,000 brought down to $250.
Well, that was that was the other one. The bank one was like $7,000 down to $250. And then they just made me pay it on the spot. I haven't done the 19,000 of that, so I'm going to try again and see how it goes.
Okay.
I just wondered how
Yeah.
that will go because
They'll see you coming.
they have more authority to like go in and overreach. whereas
Well,
the
that
bank
might be
doesn't.
something we can look at. You know, projects, looking at projects. So, you know, the so-called ATO, and yeah, maybe we can look at that.
Well, at the earlier forums, earlier this year, we were quoting some information which was saying taxation is a manipulative material creation, it's spiritually immoral, and it's a poor understanding of leadership and management. So that's a consciousness issue. It sounds like to me a consciousness issue. We think we need to pay taxes in order to have services, but where does most of that money go? Into bureaucrats.
Yeah, that's right. I still have a pay my share.
And there might have been a time when we didn't need to pay those sort of taxes to have services.
Well, let's just say that there might be more than one way of doing things in this.
Otherwise, I say, we've got the money there, you can afford it.
Yeah.
Just go and look in your bank account. That is it.
Yeah.
Put it down the street.
Yeah, they can.
The point you're making is as long as you're negotiating, as long as you're asking questions, they can't actually go into the bank
They
account
can't
because
take
you're in
action.
negotiation.
That's what I suspect. That if you're asking questions and you're engaged, they can't move forward in the process.
Yeah.
They need certain things to either be said. You need to sort of become, you know, if you're not claiming something and you're asking, for some reason it tends to get worked differently.
So what's the end game though here? You just keep going backwards and forwards with more questions and like where does it land?
Where does it land? That's a good question.
Does it get resolved? In some
I think it
process?
depends where your heart is. You know,
Don't they
it'll
just
land
say-
where your heart is. And what are we demonstrating in doing this? Are we demonstrating maybe the heart or
Don't
something
they
good?
have powers to
Where-
refer it to the...
Because they'll test where you're coming from.
Yeah. Do they have powers to refer it to a collection agency, for example?
Yeah, they do. So once
So-
it gets there, it's different. You can still, but again, it's still a negotiation. So they sell the debt to a debt collector, and then the debt collector contacts you and tries to put all the pressure on you.
But the thing is, they can sell it to the debt collectors without your consent.
Yeah, they
It
do.
does-
Even
it
while
does-
you're still asking
yeah.
questions, they can sell it on
They notify you though.
while you're asking
They do
questions.
It doesn't matter though.
Yeah, it's just
Whether
Well,
it's
not
them
everyone
or
says
someone
they
else
haven't notified me.
or some other agency, it's all agency.
Yeah.
So agencies are a good one to think about, because I don't want to do business with agency.
Yeah.
I'm not coming into an agreement with agency. There's lots of agencies. Often a police is an agent for something else. You know, it comes back to who's the one, you know, is there anyone that believes or is claiming what's being said? So often, you know, police officers are generally just informants. And, you know, they're not the ones that so when you sort of say, well, who said that? You know, where's that come from? Did somebody say that? And they might say, it's legislation that comes from Parliament, perhaps. I'm not sure what their response would be. I was like, well, who's that? Have you met Parliament? You know, I've not met Parliament. I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. Hello. Can we work this out? So you keep bringing it back to here, you know, who you're dealing with, including with the judge. You know, the judge will really test you. You know, they're the real practice.
Do you know anybody who's been in that situation in a courtroom and been successful with that approach?
Danny over here has been in court a bit and has had many interesting experiences.
So,
Yeah, Danny's an interesting guy to talk to because he's done lots of stuff, and you know, I've basically picked up a lot of what I do now and how I approach it from Danny and his brother.
Has he been successful?
Sorry?
Has he been successful?
You'd have to ask him.
Can you tell us if you would like?
who's Danny? Is he in the room?
Can
Is that you?
tell us a couple of things?
I don't have time for all this, James. Can we just cut to it?
Is he allowed to tell us anything?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, fair question.
Could we ask him to go up here and tell us?
maybe.
You see now, you've already cancelled it out. Should I just need a straight conversation? And
Yeah.
you said, right, I can't handle it because I just asked
He's
you.
scrolling through his phone.
That's not,
Really, the glasses, you know?
Okay.
So, we've left with the glasses.
Excuse me, what's your name?
Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Rebecca, can I answer your question in one
Please.
sentence?
Yeah. That'd be great.
Okay, is that okay? One sentence?
Yep.
Okay. Sure.
An authority consisting of individuals, I'm going to call them men and women, but their real legal term is persons, have made an offer to you that income they perceive that you've made has a taxable component and they're asking you for it. You've got several options, all of which need to keep you in honour as a living being, not a person. Now that's going to fly in the face of perhaps how you see yourself, because
No.
most individuals that I say, you a person? Yeah, a person. So you could, and I'll just toss you one and then I'm going to finish, you could adopt one approach. You might write to them and say, and there's a form for doing it, I, a living being with the given names, but you might say in that statement of truth, called an affidavit, certain things, and you might make an offer to pay it $2 a week, and you might send 5 weeks' payment in the form of a money order for $10. Now, I'm pretty sure it'll get rejected, and 3 days later, your debt's waived. Now, that's according to the Bill of Exchange Act, which is a piece of lawful legislation created in 1907, I think. Anyway, look, I don't want to get right into it because I want to hear what this guy's saying, but there are ways to do this, and I can, Thomas, will perhaps take you to introduce you to Darren Dixon, and he'll probably solve this solution.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, there's various ways of doing it. I mean, you can go to the core, which is, you know, to query about where the request is coming from, and does anyone believe you owe the money. I think it's important to have where you're coming from clear, which is, are we all not contributing already?
Yeah.
And you know, that kind of thing. And if you don't have the money, much money, you don't have much money, you know, there's not a lot there. It's pretty basic the way I see it. So it's about conscionable conduct. And we, in a way, I believe, you know, in a way, you know, we have to set those boundaries ourselves. You know, the world around us is sort of possessed, and if you're coming from the right place, it will be seen. Police will see it, judges will see it. I'll see where you're coming from. So it's important to get that right, and not to, have too much spitting out of our mouth. It's okay to get a bit passionate sometimes, but just to be careful of what we say and, what sort of laws you start trying to use. You can be digging yourself into a hole. So with this stuff, it's all about, breaking it right down to who believes anything about anything. And then you'll get tested and just keep coming back to the simplicity and learning to do that in the face of... A judge will be the hardest person to deal with. But judges generally, you'll end up getting some kind of... It can still work, and they might even like you, because they sort of see that you're doing the work and you're engaging and that you're coming from an okay place. So you don't want to go in kind of, me against them too much, or, bad guy, good guy. Even if there's those elements maybe going on a heart level, don't eat of that fruit, Try and stay in the purity and in the innocence, and learn to come from that place, because that's what's going to work and keep you from transgressing. That's a good word, right? So a lot of this stuff goes back to Scripture and say what was being demonstrated, or what's in some of the Scripture. I like where Jesus said to Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate said, they're claiming that you're saying you're the King of the Jews, or the Son of God. And he said, so they say. Now, he obviously kind of knew how to deal with the Romans. I mean, the Romans were around. They were sort of like the big guy, the law.
Sort of the authority, yeah.
The authority, yeah. And, Pontius ended up saying, I see no guilt in this man. And Pontius didn't want to sort of like punish him or whatever, because he just there was no guilt that he saw. And then obviously the mob was turned against him, and the situation kind of went from there.
But isn't the legal system, and specifically the judges, there to legalise the illegality of what's going on? So it's a tough one, mate, isn't it? Because they can come back and demand, don't they?
There are lots of legislations, and legislations are an idea that I'm interested in talking about and looking at a bit further myself. What does that mean? How does one open that idea up? So there's legislation upon legislation. I mean, it's like a forest. So these questions just bring it back to zero.
Is there a time comes when they load the gun and come at you, though?
Not if you're in honour. If you're in honour, if you're corresponding and you're in honour, it seems to not go there. I mean, I've seen this. I mean, you've got to start doing it. So I'm going to go to court soon. Just on just the voting thing, because I want to have an experience and see what it's like for me to talk, or hear a judge and talk with a judge and deal with a situation. But I found with the fines, they just stop. They may not do this, but with me, they just stop sending me stuff.
I've had that experience as well.
Yeah.
They called me up and they said there's all this outstanding fines. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I've never gotten a single notice. And then it all just kind of went away, and I thought, okay, I'll just to see what happens, and then like ages went by, nothing happened. And I'm like, I'm expecting somewhere that out of nowhere something's going to happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't presume that all this stuff
It was
isn't
years
there.
ago,
It could probably be called upon at some point.
though. Yeah.
But until then, I just
Yeah.
deal with it as it comes.
Well, I think the only reason the judge was fair to me when the last time when I did this, I went around a red light, I went around the corner, the light changed, but I was already partway round, so I was committed, so I had to go because of the car in front of me. And I explained it, and I said, I didn't have any choice, I couldn't just stay there, so I had to move forward, I committed. And I said, it's really unfair, and he said, okay, let me see, look me up, you can see I didn't have any other fines. Like, okay, well, I think that's reasonable, I don't think you should pay it. Because you don't have any history, but now they might look at it and go, oh, all of a sudden, there's these things that are just sitting there with no action taken because they haven't contacted me. And it might be a different story. So I feel like that's not the right approach.
It might. It was said by a guy that I did a common law course with years ago. The courts can be very fickle. So you don't quite know what you're going to be dealing with, but it's about preparing oneself and knowing how to speak. And I want to get back to some concepts. So transgressing, agency. So in a way, this word here, transgressing, it's almost like that's when we go into possession or we start making a claim, and it can get us into trouble. So we've got to be careful of that, because the state of mind of innocence is to not eat of the fruits of this possession and claim. You're asking the question. You're always opening up the door. Does someone have a claim on this? Or what does one believe about that? But I wanted to... A really important one is hearsay. Hearsay is pretty much anything on paper or anything that's coming out of someone's mouth that's a quote, that they're not going to say, that they're not going to claim as coming from them. So this is where, the legislation door opens up. It's like, well, it's legislation. You might say, well, that's just hearsay. Who said that? Can you... And another thing to go with that is, can you put that in writing? Very important one. Asking anyone, who's making a claim, can they put that in writing? Themselves, preferably in pen. If they want to type it out, that's fine.
Can you send me proof? Would that be an adequate question of what you're saying?
In a way, to me, that's like asking for proof.
Yeah.
You're kind of asking for them to send you proof, rather than...
They can't do it. Well, it's difficult.
Yeah, you want to see evidence. If someone's going to make a claim, then what's the evidence that backs it up? What's the evidence that we own anything? What's the evidence that there's not enough money, to have public transport and that? One thing I believe is, could it have all been paid for in the beginning? What is debt? And who benefits? What are these things? So you know what I mean? Like, this stuff can really be opened up, but until people start opening the doors and creating, I think, communities, because they don't work alone. Police don't work alone. The politicians don't work alone. They've got, hordes of people and lawyers at their disposal. So, in a way, we have to be like them. You work together and you create community and trust and things like that. And even, it's not really us and them, but, to demonstrate how we treat each other. And I think, that's very powerful. Many a time even before I was doing this sort of thing, dealing with police, and you sort of say something passionately and they sort of see where you're coming from, and it kind of can disarm them in a way. Suddenly their attitude changes. They see that you're actually someone that cares. That's been my experience a bit.
Don't they hand it to somebody else that's tougher and comes at you and you disarm them and then hand it to somebody else till you get a real ruffian that right drop shot over you? No? Did that happen ultimately?
Well, perhaps that's an opportunity to show one's fruits to more people. I mean, I think one's just got to look at this stuff as always an opportunity. I mean, in Scripture, was it like go out there and become demoralised? Was that sort of the message? No, it was go out there and keep meeting it at every turn and support each other and always connect with the source of your strength, of one's strength, whatever that power is. I don't wish to make too many claims about what it is, but that it is, I have to connect with it every day for my well-being, to keep bringing me back. Because the world around me, it drag me into this and drag me into that, and I have to, come back to my own contemplation. And that's the work, dealing with one's fears, keep purifying my energy, to get up each day and live. And this is great, like seeing how many people are here, because, this is the beginning of people helping each other out potentially. And, I've talked to a lot of people, some people who are interested, and a lot of people aren't interested. They just buck up. And so I think, having a proper sort of forum, a proper space where people can connect and start working on projects, like you've got a project, and, there's this 5G thing, and I think there is a way of dealing with that. In some parts of the world, they've got the 5G rollout on the back foot a bit. And it's about finding these things. How do you find the process? I've been trying to find, how do I engage with this alleged political system that makes a lot of decisions based on legislation. And I'm finding it very difficult to work out how to do that. I'm slowly getting there, just by asking certain questions. I went into the locals office and they're like, oh no, we're just, that's federal stuff, so that's these people. It's just like, learning how to
That's what I got told.
how to do it.
Same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of layers and
Like passing.
being passed on. So you want to find, eventually it'll lead to the right person to be asking, and then you've created the pathway in a way. So I'm wanting to find, who do I engage with to intercept the political, this so-called political system, to get something stopped, whether it's Adani or foresting. There's other ways of doing it. But I'm interested in, working out that, because the way I understand it is these people are in their offices and there's no incentive to not just be, making these decisions that may be unpopular, unless they're getting kind of inundated with directly to their offices or whatever by people who they're allegedly meant to be serving, saying, hey, this isn't okay, or asking some questions. So pressure seems to make people working in this so-called political system, perhaps behave a bit differently. But until I work out where I'm meant to sort of speak to or who or whatever, I'm a bit at a loss as to what to do. So with the 5G thing, it's about learning how to do that, and what would be the way to I don't yet know a lot about how to bring something to task, as I've heard it said.
In Power Group have been really explicit around, as far as I understand it, there's kind of two ways. There's what the barrister is doing, going through the criminal kind of magistrate's court, and then there's the notice of liability way of doing it. Which, and they haven't done the documents in Australia.
I've been waiting for that for 1.5 years.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how long can we wait,
For what?
For the
Empower Group in Australia.
templates, because our legislation constitution is different.
Well, I didn't say we mentioned it, and then
Yeah, and then last week they told me, it'll be, in the next month, but.
There'll be a way. It's about seeing.
I don't want to rely on others. I want to, how can we learn how to do this? Is there any way to learn about common law and just get on with it ourselves?
George and I have got it hard written.
Okay, so great.
Did you say
George and... Yeah, so that's like, kind of like said to me
the Molino letter?
that you guys, like in the last
Well, the
meeting.
Molino letter's a partial rebuttal, but Rebecca's talking about an NOL.
Yeah.
Now, George very cunningly picked something up in the Punza Legislative Act. And it's a whole new subject, so I don't want to ask him to get into it, but it's hard written.
The article I saw, it seemed pretty common sense to me that it's bringing a danger. So how do you bring to task, potential conduct that is dangerous? It's like going to a police station saying, I want to lay a charge. Or how do you sue a government or something? Not that one wants to do that, but if there's stuff going on that needs to be kind of intercepted and brought into question about its health, then yes, one might want to do these things. And it should be, most lawyers would know how to do this. So it couldn't be that hard to work out how do you bring to task, how do you sue a government or a department? It happens. So
Yeah.
one's just got to suss it out and then put it into action.
Yeah.
And then work together as on that project.
Thomas, if I could just make a quick comment on that. A lawyer or registered member of the Australian Bar, the AR, into that, cannot take action against legislation because it contravenes his oath to the bar.
I'm not suggesting that the lawyer would do that, but the lawyer would know the process by which you may be able to do it, if that's what you're wishing to do.
No, any advice they give to you is in contravention of their oath to the bar, which is their primary oath. If you look up what their oath is, you'll find their oath is to the bar first, to the court second, and to the customer third. And,
Look, there are lawyers who work outside this stuff,
yeah.
They're not
and
practicing yet.
yeah,
Have practice.
Yeah.
That mentality is not going to help you find what one needs to find for whatever it is that one is seeking to do. It's all there.
Well, what
That's
you're
what I would
saying is that a lawyer or a past lawyer or a student, they would be able to play with the system better because they understand it.
You might have
They know how to
a
do
lawyer that works in activism or so-called activism, or a lawyer that's done work for people in regard to governments.
What about a retired judge?
Yeah. I mean, that would be amazing, you know,
They're so
to have that
crooked.
kind of a person to
They're
talk
never
to
come
would be
across.
amazing.
Judges are the most crooked people.
Well, don't
I don't know
assume,
what
don't
That's what I
assume,
felt.
I wouldn't presume that.
No, okay.
Like, this is a thing you find that behind all this so-called, you know, nastiness, there's also heart and just people. And people have these beliefs. So you could...
You reckon judges have a heart, do you? They're there
Yeah.
to legalise the illegality of situations.
Yeah, I think they've got a heart. I think the heart can get a bit lost in so-called systems.
Usually red wine is lost in.
Red wine, well maybe it gets lost in red wine, you know. Maybe a mixture of red wine and legislation.
Nothing wrong with red wine, but not wrong with judges. Yeah.
But to approach it with an open heart, then you might get an open heart. You know what I mean? Like, human beings are neither this nor that, the way I see it.
One of my cousins
What
is
would
a judge.
bring-
I should probably ask her something.
Bring her along, we'd like to talk to her. I think.
Yeah, I don't know whether we go that far, but
Would she come?
no, I don't think so. But
That's-
she
that's the-
answers
that
my
is the
questions
problem.
though. She
That
answers
is,
questions.
but that is exactly the problem. Why don't they come? And face the people.
Well, no,
If we're talking nonsense, talk
Understanding
to
the
us.
legal system.
But she does have some idea, like, I remember when the referendum about, my brain's not working. You know, for the Republic, that was, you know, around
Little while ago,
2000. Yeah, she says to me, don't vote yes,
Yeah.
because they're going to rewrite the like the Constitution in a really dodgy way.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, exactly. She was totally on the money, and my friends gave it the hardest time for not voting yes to that. But it's because she knew.
That's the only way they can change
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Constitution is through a referendum. So
Yeah, but it's the way they do it.
well, that's
It's the
exactly,
way
we have
it's
no say
done.
over that. It's
Yeah,
just that-
it's-
Well, this
yeah,
judge has got a
it's-
heart. Bring her along here. We'd
Yeah.
like to talk.
Well, what is it? Your cousin? The
My
cousin.
cousin, yeah.
Well, the cousin could be an interesting person to talk to. I'd be
Yeah,
interested
I
in
agree.
talking to someone who's served as a
Oh, look,
judge.
I could ask her. It's yeah.
Because
Get
they're,
her to come and have an innocent chat with us. Just no.
or maybe not too much. I don't know, too much of the group, but maybe a small.
Yeah.
You know, you could go
I've
visit
been
for a
looking
cup of tea or something.
That would be
questions
very
to her, but I don't
interesting.
know if
Yeah.
she'd do that. But look, I could ask.
Anyway, there's people. I mean, I've got a kind of
I
a
like you.
family member who's, I think he's a lawyer, and I've talked to him before, so I wouldn't mind getting in contact with him.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to be able to ask questions, or other communities that have done stuff, even in overseas. But I also keep it simple. Bring it back to, okay, what did they do that worked? And then how do you do it? So it took me quite a while to work out, well, if you wanted to lay a charge on, for some reason, how would I do that? And it took me a while to get my head around, we just walk into a police station, so I want to lay a charge.
Again, what if you want to lay a charge against the police?
So that's
No,
government.
Government.
Well, there's still a process there.
No,
There's
but I
still-
mean, I had the police come into my house to arrest my nephew because his mother, who's got a mental illness, had called them and said, made up some story. They just barged into my house as he lived with me. She went to arrest him. He said, you can't take me. And I said, no. And they said, yes, we can. Under the Mental Health Act, we can take you. Because she said, he's unhinged and, but he wasn't on drugs, he wasn't aggressive, he wasn't anything. They threw him against the wall, put his arms behind his back, broke his arm. I heard the crack and I saw his face in front of, and I was like, I lost my shit completely.
What age, John?
Huh?
What age?
What age is he?
Yeah.
He's 20. And then I called a lawyer, and because I've gone that up for an accident that I had, and he said, they said, if it happens on your property, the police aren't accountable, it's the owner of the property. I'm like, for the police brutality, I'm responsible. Well, I'm not even the owner.
Look, that's people saying a lot of
I
stuff.
know, exactly.
So you find out
I
who,
didn't either.
the way I see it is you find out who the officer's name that committed
Yeah.
the offence.
No, because it happened so quickly, I didn't.
you know, and then you work from there.
I
So
don't need police in the house. It wasn't just
if
one.
you start dealing with police as legislation, police, you're dealing with a person. A person came into the home and behaved in a certain way.
Mm.
Let's bring it back to that.
And
you,
I had the police call me and they said, you know, well, he's sorry, because he actually apologised when he did it because he knew he'd done something wrong. He was way too forceful. And he said, and he said, I didn't mean to do that. I said, well, if you don't know how to do that, then you're really in the wrong job. It's sort of fundamental to being a policeman, is to know how to contain someone without brutalising them. And then the police called me to just sort of say, you know, what my statement. I said, I've already given you a statement, I'll give you another statement. I said, what's going to happen to this guy? Oh, nothing. We just want to make sure that, you know, and then they got really angry with me that I was pushing back saying this is ridiculous. And then it just went nowhere. And, you know, I just I forgot about
So what
it.
happened?
you know,
Well, he had to go and have surgery. He's got pins in his arm permanently. You know, no, it's really full on.
And so he didn't sue anybody?
Well, he hasn't done anything because this is probably about 6 months ago. It wasn't that long ago, so I don't know if it's actually.
Can't he sue
I
someone?
always try and keep bringing it back to the basic thing. So if you're wanting to make, that's about making a claim. So someone's done something, and then to engage in bringing it to, you know, to be looked at, whether, you know, that it's committed perhaps a crime or harm. You know, in this case, there's been harm. You're not dealing with a police officer, you're dealing with a person. So if you start thinking, well, you know, the cops, they're allowed to do this and that, that's something you're being told. You're wanting to deal with, sorry, this person's done something, and then there's a process to bring that person, like anyone, to the table about what's happened, and opening those doors, you know, and that'll end up in court probably, and then you deal with it there, and you create you create a, you know, wherever it is you're coming from, you know, create a case or a position or you know, where you're coming from. You might bring into question, if, you know, I've thought a lot about these things, you know, what kind of dialogues come into what would I want to say? So, well, if someone's behaving in that way and they're in a position where they're serving this purpose, then I don't feel comfortable or safe with that kind of person serving that role. That there wasn't a demonstration of patience, or, you know, whatever it is. He didn't bring any peace in the situation, wasn't listening, and whatever it is, you know, so you sort of open these doors. But be careful of getting involved in stuff you've been told or what they'll say. All this stuff, I'm pretty sure, is pretty simply able to be brought to the table or into the courts if there's a controversy.
Is there a statute
or a
of limitations?
contest.
Does anyone know? I mean, there would be. What is
No,
it?
there isn't.
There isn't. Oh, okay.
Was there something Rebecca could have said that would have been effective when the police came into her house to take
Joseph.
to take Joseph?
Yeah, said, well, let's, you know, who told you this? Could you put it in writing?
Out there.
Can you prove that he's mentally ill?
Well, they said we don't have to, because I said, on what basis are you arresting him? And they said, under the Mental Health Act.
Section
Take
345, they
Yeah.
are allowed to
Yeah.
arrest a person, take them to a hospital to be first medically
Yes,
assessed,
that's right.
and then have,
Which he
I
was.
think, 1 or 2 psychiatrists analyse whether the subject needs to be kept longer,
Yeah.
and there is a minimum period of,
So
sorry,
what-
maximum period 28 days.
Yeah, so they did that, but they'd also broken his arm before that, so he had to end up going to the hospital anyway. And then they assessed him and said he's not, you know, he's fine, you know, take him home. Which then he had to wait weeks and weeks and weeks in agony and pain till they could get him into the
I'd
surgery.
love
It
to
was
help this young
horrific.
guy with a claim.
When you're, just in terms of your saying to dealing with a person, would you or Rebecca or I say Sergeant blah blah or just blah blah? Do we use their name or their role, including their name in terms of any correspondence?
Either one. Either one.
Either one.
Depends whether you're submitting an affidavit. If it's an affidavit,
Whatever name he uses.
Okay.
but you can also refer to him in his capacity as an agent for Victoria Police Corporation or whatever. So all my notices of liabilities have 2 lines at the top. I issued them to the living entity, so John Smith. And then if I know his title, Senior Constable, it'll be Senior Constable Smith. Smith is all in capitals. John Smith is capital J.
Yeah, look, I'm wanting to steer away from that because it's buying into a lot of the hearsay about who people think they are and what they believe they can do. So, a health act, who's saying that for starters? Starting to open up these doors. And then how do you correspond that? How do you engage in the process of bringing to task what people are doing? And they might, if you do it properly, you might find you get a different result. Police might behave less aggressively. If you sort of say, well, can you put that in writing? Or show us the evidence, see how it goes. But the Health Act, that's a good one to learn to deal with, because I've had lots of friends being taken,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get picked up by a CAT team or by the cops.
Or what's called?
Well, the Health Act, like you're saying, there's a criteria that they believe in, and if
So somebody could say, I'm a lunatic, they'll come and take me away to assess me, would they?
You could literally lean against a post in a main street, Errol.
Yeah.
A police officer or a concerned member of the public could notice you, could ring the police.
Really?
Police could come and say, we have a concern. That's all they've got to have is valid concern, and they could use the public witness saying, I saw you lean against a post, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So they then have the authority under that act to take you and have you assessed.
So it's an area we might
Unless you
want to work.
separate yourself from being a legal person, just stand in your own power as a man, then they can't touch you.
But do they know that? I mean, that's the issue,
Yeah,
is that they
yeah.
think they have authority. Like,
Well,
my
He's
boss-
done that before, so.
I've beaten cops 3 times in public, and it was 6 against 1, and 4 against 1, 4 against 1. And, I'm not the first guy either, and I'm not the
What
last.
was the context? Can you share your story?
Oh, just, like driving around without registration and stuff like that. And there's certain terms and words that you've got to understand the difference between legalese and
Yeah.
just plain English.
Yeah,
Common law is not the same as what's legal.
yeah.
Legal is the opposite.
No,
But is the common law recognised? Like, how does it, like, just having those
Common law
words,
is
how
unwritten.
does it,
Common law is unwritten. It just means cause no harm to your fellow man. That's it.
See,
if they
that's,
want to take you back to the station and lock you up because you're driving around?
Doesn't matter. They locked me in the back of the panel van. They made lots of threats, but they didn't carry through anything they were saying.
But, like,
Well,
is
then
it
what they
interesting
did
that
lock you up? I've been locked up.
Yeah,
So
they
did
locked me
not
up in the
lock you
back
up?
of the panel van, but they said, oh, we're going to take you away and crash your car. They couldn't do any of it. Why? Because I didn't surrender a name. I didn't surrender a name, I didn't contract, I didn't consent, none of that.
But isn't the issue that you can be doing all those things, but then they can just use force, which
Exactly.
sort of,
That's what
yeah,
happened.
which
Yeah.
tends
Yeah,
to
they
sort
used,
of over.
they
like
used
that-
force against me, but I wasn't giving up, was I?
But
I
it
was
sounds like
prepared-
they didn't really use
I
force
was
against
prepared to
you.
be locked up
nothing.
all night, but eventually they
Oh.
wouldn't let you go.
yeah, I think you've got to be willing to. I wouldn't kind of fight, rather, but like.
Yeah, I
What's
didn't
your
like,
name?
I didn't strike him,
Nick.
I didn't strike him, but I was physically resisting, but there were 6 of them, so eventually they got through.
But, this is about dealing with the belief of law and ways it can be done, and yeah, it might be a bit confronting, but it works and it's interesting, and it's part of what it is. You know, if you can't ask a question, you know, then you must not have a mouth. You know, if one has a mouth, one can ask a question and a voice. So, you know, it's the first thing that law, the way is, it's about questions are a basic thing. And they may not like the questions that you're undermining based just a sec. But you're asking them. If they're getting agitated, well, that's a sign, mate, perhaps that you're getting to them. They're not liking that you're not just taking on what they're saying, whoever that is. But you kind of got to hold your ground, and you've got to go with the process, and you've got to be able to relinquish yourself to that, as you know he to some degree did. You know, see what happens. You don't want to get into a situation where you're getting bashed up or anything like that. You're just asking questions, whether you're asking questions outside on the porch, on the street, or potentially at the station. At a station. Doesn't matter. You're asking questions, or in a court. The question is the question is the question. And until the question, you know, a question needs to be answered by the other, or they might convert it and not answer it, in which case they might get another question.
What about with correspondence?
Still questions. Still asking a question. And the question is nuclear. It opens the door. It's part of the it keeps you in honour. So asking a question is about staying in honour. If you don't say anything, or if you go no, or you know, then we can fall out of honour quite easily. But it's actually staying in honour and learning to do that in a way that, you know, it's a bit like walking the sword. What were you going to say?
Sorry?
Did you want to ask something?
Oh, yeah. It's about questions. It's a question about questions. And that question, the question I have about questions is, if a police officer has apprehended your wallet and they're looking for your identity, which you haven't given them, information so that you enter into contract with them, I understand, is what do you say? Can I ask you, Thomas, what question do you ask them when they hold up your ID?
I'll tell you what happened the second time.
And they go, is this you? I mean, they're asking me a question, so I've got to ask the question back. What's the question?
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good. Now we're getting somewhere.
That's my question about your question.
So
coach.
they asked for a license.
I've got to tell you what happened the second time when you're done.
Right.
Yeah.
Go on.
When you're done.
All right. And you know, I'll always say, "Is this what you're looking for?" And they'll go, "Yes," you know, and I'll go. So they asked me, "Are you?
Is that you? Yeah.
Is that you?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I might say, "Does it look like me?"
Right. Go on. And next.
And he'll say yes.
And then you'll go.
It's like it looks, and I'll say, "Well, it looks like a card to me."
Right. I'm just trying to get the gist of your
Yeah. So it looked like, I'd say, it looks like a card to me. So how could that be me?
Oh, right.
And you know, I won't be like trying to piss him or her off, but that's not. This isn't me.
There's no way you could say that and not upset them.
I'm not concerned. I'm not concerning myself, Kathy, with whether the person chooses to get up, you know, just becomes upset about it. But this is not me.
So Thomas,
This is
if
a
they
card.
say to you,
This, whatever this is, perhaps it's me.
Thomas,
Yeah.
if they say to
But
you,
what that?
sorry,
Yeah.
if they say to you,
This is
who
an
are
idea.
you? If
Yeah.
they say, if you go, that's a card, or
Who are you? Yep.
Yeah, if they say, yeah, who are you? What do you say then?
I don't know, maybe you need to ask the maker.
No, Danny's got a perfect answer to that.
No, well, I'll just say what comes to me.
No, the perfect answer is what do you mean?
What do you mean?
Oh, you can say what do you mean by you? What does you mean? That's a good one.
Going down the rabbit hole.
The rabbit hole.
What's that?
Exactly.
What do you mean by you? Talking with a man or a person.
Yeah, exactly. Look, just before you answer, I think I can answer this whole question in one reference from Cornell Law University. Some very interesting people, students, put together a discourse on exactly this topic, and a friend sent it. A man or woman who acts, in inverted commas, in joinder, Joinder, a lot of people know what it means, to a legally generated artificial person. And we'll get into whatever an artificial. Created and controlled by the state, has legal status. So that is a man or woman who acts in joinder, who joins in to the legal status of the artificial person, has legal status in the Admiralty, Maritime, Commercial Jurisdiction, International Law of the Sea. Legal jurisdiction over a man or woman derives from consent to contract into legal fiction. I am that car, that name. If there is no valid contract, there is no jurisdiction. The legal, and so when Thomas was saying what question, when you were saying what question you asked, I've asked cops, are you operating under the Police Powers Act 2009? Yes, because they don't know what I'm talking about. Are you a police officer acting as a Commonwealth public officer? Yes. Are you a police officer acting as an employee of Victoria Police Corporation, ABN? It's in my notes. Yes. What are my obligations to you? We don't know. They don't know. At that point, they don't, because they know that. But
that's very memory intensive.
No, you just have it on.
So hang on, because maybe you can do a talk some other time on that. What does one mean by you?
Yeah.
That's the question that came up. I've said one here instead of you. You can be a bit accusatory. What does one mean by you? So I grappled with that for a while, and Danny here, if he doesn't mind me calling one that, used to talk about that, and I was sort of like, what is one doing when you're asking, what do you mean by you?
Do you mean the letter U?
As in what word?
You, the claim of you.
The entity.
The claim of you.
Yes.
And it's a way of, in a way, questioning where's someone coming from? What are they trying to get one involved in by saying you? What are you trying? What are they trying to get? Whatever this is, involved in. So what do you mean by you? I mean, it's a head fuck of a question, but it's a good one.
What's the response usually? Does anyone have any? Did you say you had a?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us the story.
Alright, so if you're in court, right, if you've been dragged in there or whatever, and then the judge or the magistrate, or should I say the man or the woman who's hiding behind the bench in that capacity, which is underneath the man or the woman, but if, it depends. If he or she says, who are you, or what are you doing here today, that word you, they're speaking to both the man or woman and the legal person, right? Now, if you respond to that straight away, they can, not necessarily will, but they can assume that you've consented to being a legal person, you've walked into their jurisdiction.
Well, immediately they ask for your name
So-
to stand up, don't they? So you have to identify.
Yeah, you've got to be careful with names too.
Yeah.
So if they say, who are you, or what are you doing here, as Pauline mentioned, if you respond with a question, ask a question, right? Saying, what do you mean by you? Are you talking to the man, that's me, or woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a legal person?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the word in what I started to read you there that's important is joinder. It's an acceptance of your legal person. If you go home and access your birth certificates, wherever you've got them in your house, if you're born in Australia, and you write your name on a piece of paper, John Allen Smith, my name, let's say, and you then get your birth certificate and you turn it over and it says, it actually is a symbolic art form where they've created a legal person by capitalising your given names. My given names are Paul Mellersh. The system of registration with births, deaths, marriages made a big stuff up in my case because they didn't register me for nearly 8 weeks after I was born. So I had an identity as Paul Mellersh for 8 weeks. And in court I sit there and say, I have the given name as Paul Mellersh, I have a certification for that. I'm here to represent the entity on your charge sheet, Paul Monteith. And at that point, and I've had this happen now twice in court, the prosecutor goes unplugged and say another word. And so my process, and I believe, you know, I followed Thomas's, I've been, I don't know, I met you a couple of years ago, and you seem to have a really good analytical process to learning, you know, what you've obviously now learnt, and I love it. And I'm still learning. I've been learning for 8 years, but now I'm starting to back them off a bit. So it's all this process of joinder.
How do you spell that?
Joinder.
There is a D in it, isn't there?
So it's an agreement. You know, they are very good at treating.
It's a principle of you know, in joinder, you know, like coming into a kind of a belief contract or becoming involved. You know, when someone comes up to you on the street and just starts talking to you, it's a way of getting you and that person into whatever it is that they're wanting to engage with. So I like the way, you know, you sort of responded, where it's like, you know, what do you mean by you?
I haven't done that, but that's what I've been taught.
It's one way of doing it.
I've been in that position.
But one might just ask, what do you mean by you, Judge? What do you mean by you, Judge?
And they'll flare up and arrest you, which is what happened to me in November 2017. They have got such power in that court. It's not a court, it's a maritime jurisdiction.
Did they actually take you in?
Oh yeah, they put me away for the day.
That's
okay. That judge is being challenged, you know. But magistrate. But what I'm getting at is, this is an awareness shift, and this is why I'm loving what you're doing, Thomas, because you're presenting to us your take on this awareness shift that we've all got to make. And you know, like, yeah,
I think if there was a, you know, well, you're under arrest, you know, I'd sort of say, well,
I don't need arrest.
what for? You know, is it, have I done, you know, have I hurt someone by asking a question? So the process probably won't get very far, because, you know, we don't live, you know, you can't just go arresting people, you know, this isn't sort of like a, you know, a totalitarian society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question?
There's still
you in a minute?
Sure.
And yeah, but yeah, I mean, when I go into court, you know, I'll get to practice and see how it goes. I don't think they're two bad people. I mean, I've been into court and observed, and it's sort of like, yeah, they're just people. So, you know, if they're not in a good mood or whatever, then I'm dealing with someone who's not in a good mood. But, you know, you're gauging how things go, and you know, but you at least might say, well, I use the name. So I use the name. Is that okay?
There's a lot of tricksters though. They pretend to be nice.
Sure.
Speak up.
Sure.
So there's a lot of tricksters in
Yeah, and it's
like I say, I think it can turn at any point. You know, nice can become nasty, you know, like that, or nasty can become nice. You know, like it's.
one of the great questions is how does the court recognise me? And does the court recognise me as a living male, affiant, A-F-F-I-A-N-I-A-N-T, and usually, and you can't go in there with inadequate knowledge because they'll trick you just like that. Right?
Yeah, you'll be tested. But
where do you learn this knowledge? This is, I mean, I feel like it's very elusive.
Forums like this, because
Carl Lentz,
Carl Lentz, Bill Turner,
Jordan Maxwell,
Christopher Johns, they're all, you know, there's
Mark Christopher.
CLRA, which is Consumer Law Research Association, which meets.
But I would say this is the best form. Like already tonight, you know, and it comes back down to the stuff that was written here. Important concepts. You can get lost in a sea. After the common law course I did, I was like frustrated because it was like so much information. I was like, none of this is usable. I can't.
Was that with Malcolm McClure?
Yeah, what is that called? Where did you do
It was with the guy named Malcolm McClure, who ended up getting into a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
And I got to meet the guy and spend the weekend sort of, finding all this stuff about law through him, and it was quite a good course. But what I saw in him, what I heard later on, was I feel like he was a bit careless, and people got into trouble following his example, and he ended up getting into trouble. And
all it takes is one little mistake.
You're on your own in a way when you're dealing with it. It's up to everyone to sort of sort their mind out and their heart and get it working together with this. And I would say be careful of complicating it. I find a lot of the stuff that you do, Polly, that's a little bit overcomplicating for me. So I keep it simple because...
What you're saying is keep it simple, stupid, and just try and be as innocent as you can. Be nice.
Yeah.
See what you can get away with. Yeah.
Well, not see what you can get away with. See what happens when you're really in your heart and in it. If you haven't hurt anyone, then you haven't hurt anyone.
The only problem
it's
is
about dealing with claims.
Did they ask if they could come in your house, or did you say come in?
No, they just turned up and said, we're here to arrest Joseph. And I said, why?
Did you let them in? Did you say come in?
Well, I opened the door and I, went outside to
So
talk
did
to
they push
them.
you out of the way? Or
No, they didn't push me out of the way, but actually Joseph got wind of it and said, fuck of that, and went to run, and so he went out the backyard over the roof, and then they kind of, and I said, well, he's done a runner anyway, so he's not here.
So they did barge.
Then they did barge in, yeah, I think they did barge in. I certainly didn't invite them in.
So that was the point where you could have gone into this stuff and asked some questions and seen how that went. At the front door, can you put that in writing? I'll consider it. Can you? Because they're saying a bunch of stuff that they believe, but when they sort of see that you don't believe it, and you're asking these legal questions of can you put that in writing, or did someone tell you this? Has someone told you acting on behalf of someone?
Well, they were, because my sister was there and she's his mother, and she said he's a danger to himself.
She was actually there.
Yeah.
The importance is the question, because then it's about you talking to the mother. Can we not work it out together?
Yeah.
sort of thing. I'm just bringing it back to, can we not work it out together in a way, you know, he's coming in as some kind of agency, is being told some stuff, so you're bringing that into question, and you say, well, I guess I'll talk to the mother. We will talk to the mother, and you know, if you can put in writing what you're saying, and you might find you get a different result.
Could you say something like, from my experience with him, I don't find him as harmful? Could I talk to the mother about that? Could you say something
Well,
like that?
she was right there.
Is that
Like, we just said it all.
okay.
I would have personally said, have you checked her mental state?
I did say that.
Did you?
But could you say, well, in my experience, he's not harmed?
Yeah, I did say that.
But you might say something. You might say something like, "Do you believe everything you hear?" You know, you might
Well,
ask
they said we
something
have to
like
take
that.
this seriously, you know. I mean, I don't know what she said, but 8 police turned up, so she must have said something very dramatic.
They must have been pretty revved up if they broke the kid's arms, or like sort of standing across saying, "Oh, what do you mean by
Well,
you?" I mean, I don't know how far you're going to get.
Well, he
this,
got
Yeah,
somehow he
like,
got revved up. He
Yeah.
got revved up. You want to try and disperse the charge. So you know, in a way, it's about staying cool. And you know, if they get a bit agitated, it's okay. I might say, sort of, look, mate, can you just relax? Because I'm just trying to talk to you.
But could they have just come
If
in
you
the
wouldn't
house
mind.
though? Like, I mean, if I just said, look, I think this is all too stressful. I'd like that in writing. I'm shutting the door now, and I'd like to go and think about it. What are they going to do? They'll just stay up
You just ask them to put it in writing and keep asking and say, look, if you put it in writing, I can consider the offer. And you know, I might have said, you know, do you believe everything you're told? And you know, and you say, look, I've got things to do. And he'll say, well, I need to come in. It's sort of like, put the offer in writing. If he says, I need to come in and do something, you say, well, can you put that into writing? That you've got to use those basics because they're. What else is there?
So hang on, what are you going to say?
I was going to say, well, it's too late now.
Yeah.
If ever it happens again where cops come knocking with a warrant for somebody's arrest, you say,
There wasn't a warrant.
It didn't warrant your writing.
There wasn't a warrant.
No, it wasn't. They had no warrant. No.
There was probable cause based on a phone call from Rebecca's sister.
Yeah.
So under probable cause, they have access under Police Powers Act 2009 because of danger.
Yeah.
Right? So they were acting as in their role as police officers to minimise harm to the public and specifically to women in the house with a 20-year-old male, so that they could enter. However, I'll bet you didn't say, I do not consent to you entering, which you wouldn't have. Nobody knows this stuff. But the simple act of you saying, I do not consent, puts them in a position where they have to show probable cause. Right? And that's where, yeah, I mean, your nephew did the wrong thing running. Where did they actually catch him? On the property or off it?
In the hallway, like they came in the house. So I just went back out and said, look, he's not here, he's done a runner. And then because the door was open, they just kind of like ran straight through the hallway. And then he was jumping over the fence, trying to get on the roof.
Did he get away?
No, he didn't. And then, but it was hysterical because I've got an 8-year-old. I mean, it was mayhem because he was screaming and he saw the cops break his arm.
This was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
This guy they were searching for, had he caused harm to him?
No. My sister's got a mental illness, so she's the one who made a claim and they followed up on it. He's like totally harmless.
Potentially, this boy, what's his name?
Joseph.
Joseph's got potentially a good counterclaim.
Look, it shouldn't get to those places
No,
in the
but it
first
did.
place.
That's
So
why you can't believe everything you hear.
So what I'm
Generally.
what I'm trying to bring it back to is how can we improve how we deal
Yeah.
with someone who has a belief about what's going on and what they feel, what they believe they need to do, and what do you ask straight away in order to engage in that properly. And I think, always, it's a really good one. Ask for it in writing. You know, because it's coming out of the mouth. Just ask for it in writing. Like,
But it appears the law is such at the moment that they don't need to do that. They just can barge in to do something, which I'm surprised at.
Unless I said I don't
Don't get mixed up
consent.
between law and
I
legal.
could have said, no, I don't consent to you coming in and taking it. It's not a
Not the word
threat.
no.
I don't-
Not the word no.
I don't-
I do not.
I think
Okay,
that's a presumption of belief. So this belief that you can barge into someone's house and grab someone and do that thing, I'm not aware that that's behaviour that's acceptable. And if you start believing that they're a police officer or they're this or that, then you're entering into that belief, which is the transgression as well. And it's sort of like trying to move away from that back to some more simple basics that can get different outcomes between people, between alleged authority and oneself. It keeps coming back to.
Could you say just be in peace in whatever situation, whatever comes up, just be in peace and act peacefully, because there is a sort of an equivalent process that the SEN, the State Emergency Service, uses. I knew somebody that used to volunteer their services there, and the method they used was, in order to stay calm, if somebody comes up and says, "Oh, this is happening, this emergency is happening," the only response required is, "So what?" "Oh, what about this?" Again, you say, "So what?" And anything that comes up, you just keep saying, "So what?" It doesn't mean you don't respond to it. You might have to respond to an emergency situation, but if somebody starts to panic, then there's a loss of control. And that's what it sounds. And that's what it sounds like to me. What you're putting forward, it's don't lose control. As soon as you lose control,
Try to stay in control anyway.
Well, yeah, you don't want to.
That's a good question. So what?
so what? Anything that comes up,
But what were you going to say? You wanted to say something?
Oh, well, yeah, I wasn't finished. I didn't say what I was going to say. So, yeah, no name, no consent, no contract, no nothing. So I was going to say, next time if it ever happens, you just say, well, that person isn't here. There's no person by that name here, and you're not lying, you're telling the truth. You're talking about a person that doesn't exist in real life. It's all fictional. Legal is fiction. That's why lawyers are liars, it's the same word.
I'd be careful of that. Like I said, ask for it to be put in paper. Everything. To be put in writing. Everything. You want it put in writing by the person who's saying it. And you might say, look, I need that. If you could put that in writing, awesome. I'll check it out. And do you believe everything you're told?
So it's really an appeal. You're appealing to their better judgment.
Yeah, you're sort of tapping into their response. That you're asking for something proper.
Well, after 2 or 3 years of...
We're dealing with the world that's full of all these claims. So you got to kind of like open them up from the core, hack them open. Ask for them in writing. Then you can consider, because they're all of an offer in a way. We want to come in and take this person. That's an offer. Well, can you put that in writing? And then I might say something quite candid, like, well, would you let someone into your house to take someone? And he's like, yeah, but blah, blah, blah. But that means nothing to me. What you believe you are, you're just another person. Would you, I'm not just going to let anyone into my home. Put it in writing, and I can consider what you're saying. Then you're going to get probably a bit of a different... They're going to be like, this person's onto it. Because you're wanting to learn to engage with these processes in a really different way that are really fundamental. The judges know this stuff.
You're asking for a warrant.
Yeah.
You're asking for the offer to be put into writing,
Yeah.
not a warrant. If I wanted to ask for a warrant, I'd say, can I have a warrant? You know? I'm not asking for a warrant. I'm asking for them to put whatever they believe that's coming out of their mouth into paper. So then I can look at it and I can consider it and read it and
So obviously they're not going to do
respond
that.
to it.
So how does this actually play out? Because they're not going to do that.
It's more difficult in your circumstance, what he's saying.
And I had
What
like
he's saying
3
is,
police cars, 8 cops in the street, in the front yard.
what could
And
she
I
have
say,
told?
thanks for the offer, I'm declining, but put it in writing and I'll consider it.
I wouldn't say I'm declining. I wouldn't negate it in any way. I'd say, can you put it in writing, and then I can consider it. And so
And
blah
I'll
blah
say,
blah,
no,
and
we
you
have-
just keep repeating.
So I just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it, and then shut
Not
can
like
I
a
shut the door
parrot.
in their face and just, I don't have, do I have to be barraged? Can't I just shut the door and say,
You might say, look, I need to have a cup of tea. Please put it in writing.
we haven't told them.
Please put it in writing, and I'll get back to you.
Can you ask them to leave the property?
Get off my property.
That's a
what I was
challenge, though. It's a challenge to that.
I think a better way of saying, look, mate, I'm gonna need to make a cup of tea. I'm thirsty. But if you put it in writing, I'll get back to you. It's about as best as you're going to do. And they might just, after a while, just go, we can't step forward because you've not said anything. Be careful what comes out of your mouth. So I'm wary of people taking on just
So the least amount as possible is what you're
the
saying.
least amount as possible, and you might say something candid, like I said, well, would you just let a bunch of people come in? Because as far as I'm concerned, as far as I understand it, it's not the uniforms that mean anything. They're just people. You got 5 people at your door. It's like, well, how can I help? How can I help? That's a good one. How can I help? Can you all write that down? That's the spirit of all of this. How can I help?
So rather than say, can you please leave now, after going through this protocol in writing, etc., you would go, I'm going to go and have a cup of tea now and close the door. You wouldn't ask them to leave.
I'd say, look, put it in writing. I'm going to have a cup of tea. Please put it in writing, and I'll consider the offer. Oh, it's not an offer? Well, can you put that in writing?
What you're saying is go to your car
Just
and write it.
let me finish. You know what I'm saying? Whatever comes out of the mouth, you're asking for that then to be put into writing. They say, no, we don't do that. Well, can you put that
Is
into
there a
writing?
reason why you say that, Thomas?
Because it's just a basic point of, coming to an agreement or an offer.
So it's about
About a belief.
negotiating it. That's part of the you started a negotiation process with them. Is that what you're saying?
You're showing that you'll consider
Yes.
what they're saying and what they believe. But they need to you're asking for it to be put into writing.
And you're staying in honour.
Yeah, so you're staying in honour in that way.
So staying in honour means that you're actually engaging with the process, a negotiation process with them. Is that what you mean?
You're not negotiating, you're considering. Right, consider. You're considering.
Well, can we almost draw it to a close for tonight?
Sure.
Because we've got it scheduled for the movie. But I see this process as beneficial and something that I've put out quite a bit. Is the quote from Martin Luther King is that those who love peace must be as organised as those who love war. And that's my observation, that those who love war are very, very organised, and those who love peace are scattered. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. So what I might suggest is, can we do more of these forums? And It could be yourself, it could be someone else on the podium.
I'd like to stay with this, and I would simply ask people to bring whatever projects you have, you know, whether it's fines or whether you got this or whether, you know, people are wanting to work out how to deal with the 5G. And let's look at it all with this stuff, because it's the simplest, and you know that there are different ways of doing it. And I have another friend I'd like to talk that's really good with another way of approaching.